JD Vance just dominated Tim Waltz in the vice presidential debate, guys. Now, I hope you watched it. It was a JD Vance masterclass as usual. In fact, the senator stayed cool, he stayed calm, he stayed collected. He called out Kamala Harris's failures, touted Donald Trump's record, reversed the fact check on the moderators, and even talked directly to the American people. Really, guys, nothing much else to say other than, well done, Senator. Well done, Senator Vance. And hey, this is not just me talking. In fact, renowned pollster and political strategist Frank Luntz, he reassembled his focus group of 14 people, undecided voters from 6 battleground states to watch Tuesday's debate after they previously got together to watch the Biden-Trump showdown back on June 27th. And according to the pollster, he has never seen such a unified moment toward one candidate in his life. Check this out.
I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done.
I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was.
I'm in agreement with him on this.
First of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed the shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay.
So.
Christ have mercy.
It was a shockingly civil debate, if that's a thing. Both vice presidential candidates mostly sticking to differences in policy as they squared off over the issues. In a post-debate focus group, an overwhelming majority said they thought that Vance won last night. Here's why.
He's very battle-tested, very ready, and you can just see that he went to Yale, and he's very intelligent, and he reassured a lot of people, I think.
Somebody else.
It was a strong control of the facts. He ran the show.
He remained steady during the whole performance, and I was very impressed with him being very sincere and authentic.
He humanized himself and actually looked like a regular guy.
Joining us now, pollster and communication strategist Frank Luntz. Those were people that you had polled or were talking to. And I found the last comment really interesting because he humanized himself, indicating how badly he has looked in front of some people with some of the comments he's made. What did you make of how Vance did? And then we will get to Walz.
Well, I actually want to start, and I apologize to your listeners for this voice, but this is what happens when you do a focus group that doesn't end until an hour after the debate. Our participants had a lot to say. Number one, they loved both candidates. In fact, if they could, they would have reversed the tickets and put Vance and Waltz on top and the other two on the bottom. Number two is it gave them faith in democracy, the idea that people could sit down, disagree, and do so civilly. But in terms of Vance, they were shocked that the Vance that they've seen up to this point was not the JD Vance of last night. Measured, thoughtful, emotional, willing to agree with his opponent, not divisive. The language that they used to describe him tells me that he has been misused on the campaign so far, that he would be far better communicating Donald Trump's agenda and vision and purpose than the attack dog kind of strategy that they've been using up to now. I have to tell you, only twice in my career have I had such an overwhelming movement towards one candidate. That's how significant yesterday was. Not that they were critical about Governor Waltz, but they were so shocked at how emotive Senator Vance was.
Right.
Really, guys, I'm not exaggerating. The outcome wasn't particularly close either. In fact, 12 debate viewers said JD Vance won, with only 2 saying Waltz was victorious in the debate. Now, this is a big spread, guys. Body language expert Carol Lieberman, MD, weighed on the JD Vance-Waltz debate, and according to her, Senator JD Vance oozed confidence while Governor Waltz was jittery and all over the place.
What JD Vance had that was made him most likable and most trusted was that he was authentic. I mean, it was really, you could just say it in one word. JD Vance was authentic. His body language, he did make hand movements and so on, but they were just to explain what he was saying. It wasn't sort of to hide anything, or it wasn't to exaggerate anything. It was just with what he was saying. When people watch the debate, an important part of it is the overall impression, how you feel when you're listening to each candidate. You're not going to remember necessarily everything that they said about a specific issue, or you may already know what they're going to say about a specific issue. But what's more important is how they came across. Would you like to be a person living in a country that was ruled by this person? So JD Vance came across as being very steady. Like you could kind of see him as a captain of the ship. And he wasn't too stiff, but you knew what you were going to get each time. He seemed sure of himself. He seemed, the main thing was he seemed authentic. And so you felt like you would be safe with him. Whereas with Tim Waltz, he was all over the place. He was very nervous. And also he had signs, body language signs of lying. And he was just all over the place. His body language was discordant with what he was saying. It was like too much. It made you feel exhausted and scared when you would be listening to him if you were in his land. For the first question, for example, that was about Israel. And Tim Waltz, you first saw him ohing and umming and grimacing. And, he didn't even come up with the answer, but it was all this, lots of movement, lots of, extraneous kind of movement. And then, whereas Tim Waltz just gave the answer, I would let Israel decide what they wanted to do. So, throughout it was 90 minutes. Throughout the interview, you would either find yourself getting more and more nervous, anxious, irritated by Tim Waltz, whereas you were beginning to feel calmer and as though things were going to be okay with JD Vance.
So like Dr. Lieberman said, you guys, with JD Vance, you felt like things are going to be okay. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, you had Tim Waltz, who felt like a guy that's uncomfortable around real men. You know that type? I know that type. The real beta men. Anyway, but yeah, there's no denying it, guys. I mean, even CNN had to give it to JD Vance and criticize the Minnesota governor's debate performance. Check this out.
I think there was a clear lack of preparation and execution here on
Waltz's
part.
I think actually it's the opposite. I think he had too much preparation.
Maybe, yeah.
He had so many lines that he was clearly trying to say that he didn't listen and said when JD Vance said one of the many, many things he really hit Kamala Harris on, not Tim Walz, but Kamala Harris, he didn't respond because he clearly had things in his mind. I think the lack of interviews that he has done with national media, with local media, it showed he needed more reps.
Whoops, I think Dana Bash just let it slip, guys. As the CNN host put it, the lack of interviews that Vance has done with national media, with local media, it showed he needed more. Later in the show, Jake Tapper also acknowledged JD Vance is much more experienced with this at public speaking and defending himself and pivoting. Meanwhile, Anderson Cooper concluded that Waltz seemed nervous on stage. Now, honestly, guys, if there was one thing that I took away from this debate, it's that Governor Waltz called himself a knucklehead. I mean, you got to agree with him on that one, right? Is he a knucklehead or not? Especially since he chose to accept the debate invite in the first place. But yeah, for those of you guys who didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, I have compiled my own top moments from the only VP debate between JD Vance and Tim Waltz before the election. You guys ready for this? Well, first really was the Vance highlight when the senator fact-checked CBS News moderators. How's that for turning the tables, huh? So it looks like the man learned from what happened to Donald Trump at the rigged ABC debate, and this time he turned the fact-check around on the moderator. You see, after CBS News' Margaret Brennan offered an impromptu fact-check in response to JD Vance describing cities being overwhelmed by illegal immigration, noting that many Haitians in Springfield, Ohio have been granted a legal status, JD Vance hit back at her for violating the terms of the debate. He said that it is important to say what's actually going on. He explained how there's an application called the CBP-1 app where you can go on as an illegal immigrant, apply for asylum, or apply for parole to be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand, at which point CBS decided to cut off his mic. And let me say, guys, this was one of the most shameful moments moments in a long history of shameful moments by moderators biased against Republicans. They supposedly fact-check the truth, then stop the politician from responding. I mean, that's just straight up censorship at this point. Am I right, guys? But again, JD Vance, he handled it like a champ, and that counter fact-check moment is for sure to earn him some brownie points with former President Donald Trump and other Republicans for an aggressive exchange with the moderators. But it wasn't just that moment that made this a Vance masterclass. You see, he showed compassion when he told Waltz that he was sorry to hear that his son had been witness to a shooting. He said that he didn't know that Waltz's 17-year-old son witnessed a shooting, and he's sorry about that. Governor Waltz responded and said that he appreciated it. And JD Vance remarked, "Christ have mercy." Like I said, guys, truly a masterclass from the Republican vice presidential nominee. And these moments of compassion certainly didn't even stop JD Vance from tearing into Kamala Harris. He said that the American citizens have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border, and he thinks that Tim Waltz actually wants to solve the problem. But then he said he doesn't think that Kamala Harris does. Now, as for Governor Waltz, the man just made mistake after mistake, so people just kind of felt sorry for the guy after the VP debate. For one, Waltz claimed that there would be a registry of pregnancies under what he said was Trump and Vance's Project 2025. He said it was going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access entirely, to infertility treatments. Now, first off, Vance denied this claim, saying that no, certainly they won't, and two, the Project 2025 has nothing to do with Donald Trump. In fact, it's an endeavor of the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation. Even Paul Dans, the conservative director of the group behind the conservative policy roadmap Project 2025, said that former President Donald Trump had nothing to do with the Heritage Foundation-backed policy playbook forged by dozens of different organizations. Now, as for the Democratic lie that Donald Trump wants a national abortion ban, well, he's long made it very clear that he would not back a federal abortion ban. And on the same day as the VP debate, Donald Trump went on social media saying that everyone knows he would not support a federal abortion ban under any circumstances and would, in fact, veto it because it's up to the states to decide on the will of their voters, the will of the people. Now, something else that Donald Trump commented on regarding the VP debate: Waltz's excessive note-taking. He said that Waltz has taken so many notes, never seen a candidate take more. He needs the notes to keep his brain intact. Guys, drop a quick yes in the comments down below if you agree with Donald Trump's commentary, and hey, you can definitely also hit the like button too to show your support. We only tell the honest to God truth here on the channel, so if that sounds like something that you are interested in, definitely join the community, hit the subscribe button on the channel. If you want to take it a step further, you can also click the join button down below, or even meet us over in our Patreon community. There is a link in the description down below for early release videos and content that I just do not even show here on the channel, not to mention no commercials. All right, guys, so let's get back to this one. So during a riff of the impact that the immigration has on housing, Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz claimed that illegal border crossings are down relative to when former President Donald Trump left office. For real? I'm not even sure what metric Tim Waltz was referencing to in order for him to come up with this version of facts. Somebody should definitely check him for misinformation. Because see, there were over 2.7 million encounters by U.S. Customs and Border Patrol in fiscal year 2024. In fiscal year 2020, that clocked in just under 1 million. So yeah. Did Waltz misspeak here like he did with the Tiananmen Square? Now, another classic Waltz blunder is when the governor botched a response about school shootings. He said he's become friends with mass shooters. For real? You see, moderators asked Tim Waltz how he changed his mind about banning assault weapons over his career. He said, "I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I became friends with school shooters. I've seen it." Now, he was probably referring to the victims of school shootings when he said this, but man, what a thing to say in an official vice presidential debate, huh? He became friends with school shooters? Anyway, pollster Frank Luntz, he said that Tim Waltz's gaffe may be the worst line in any 2024 debate. Now, for me though, guys, nothing beats him calling himself a knucklehead. He was forced to admit he misspoke when they questioned his past claim that he was in Hong Kong during the 1989 Tiananmen Square student protest, where reports found that he traveled to Asia a couple of months after the protest took place. He had a rather winding response from there, even detailing his background coming from Nebraska, though becoming a member of Congress and eventually governor of Minnesota, before saying he can sometimes get caught up in the rhetoric. Well, That's a long way of saying he was caught in a lie, I guess. Introducing himself to the public. Now, looking at Senator JD Vance's performance to compare it, let's just say that Waltz was blown out of the water. Many commentators say that Tuesday's debate represented the first time many Americans got an opportunity to hear from the Ohio senator at length, and Vance used the moment to humanitize himself and outline some of his biography. So Vance mentioned his mother who struggled with a drug addiction multiple times throughout the evening, and by doing so, he was able to sympathize with Americans grappling with poverty and addiction issues of their own. The Republican vice presidential nominee talked about being raised in a working class family. His mother required food assistance for periods of her life. His grandmother required Social Security help to raise him, and she raised him in part because of his own mother struggling with addictions for a big chunk of his early life. He also mentioned going to college on the GI Bill after he enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so he said he's asking to be our vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. I mean, you gotta hand it to Vance. His life story really is the embodiment of the American dream. And this debate, guys, I think is just what he needed to get back on track. Because see, polling has suggested that Vance being relentlessly attacked by Democrats over all of his past comments is unpopular with voters and less liked than Tim Waltz. Now, a Gallup poll published just a few days ago showed 46% of registered voters said that the view of Waltz as either an excellent or pretty good choice for vice president, compared to only 41% who said the same for JD Vance. Now, guys, with that being said, the debate could still help JD Vance improve those figures, both because of the skill that he showed as a debater and the details he gave about his background. Post-debate flash polls definitely gave JD Vance the win in that debate. A CNN survey of debate watchers found that 51% felt JD Vance won. Meanwhile, 49% said that Tim Waltz won. And that poll already oversampled Democrats by about 5 percentage points. Another thing about CNN's vice presidential debate instant poll, it has pegged the winning ticket in 3 of the last 4 presidential elections, with the lone exception being Paul Ryan, whose 48 to 44% poll win over Joe Biden in 2012 did not translate to an electoral success. So CNN's own poll may just be turning red just in time for November, if you guys know what I mean. And they're not the only one either. Debate host CBS News also released a flash poll, which found that 42% of debate watchers believe JD Vance won, while 41% said Waltz won and 17% concluded it was a tie. So I worked in the IT field for years, and luckily I happen to work for a company where we do business with a lot of different vendors. And one of these vendors used to take us out to lunch on a very regular basis. Let's just say like maybe once a month, once every 2 months. But when I say they would take us out to lunch, they would take us out to lunch. I'm talking about they would take us to some of these really fancy restaurants that I would only hear about or I drive past them, but they were very expensive places. And I'll be honest with you guys, I just wasn't in a position where I was willing to pay that kind of money for food. They're very expensive. I'll just put it that way. Anyway, so one day we go to lunch, and right around, it was a late lunch. So right around, I don't know, like 1:30, 2 o'clock, we're leaving and we're waiting for the car to be pulled up because they have mandatory valet. So anyway, while we're waiting for our car to get pulled up, I'm staring at this beautiful black Ferrari 458, and I'm like, wow, this thing is crazy. I don't even get to see those kind of cars often. I don't know if it's just me being a car guy, but I just wonder sometimes, like, how do people afford these things? So after the valet pulls the car up, the owner starts walking towards it, and I just happen to say, hey man, that's a sharp car. So the owner turns around and says to me, thanks, I appreciate it. So then I say to him, since he seemed friendly, I was like, hey, is that your first Ferrari? So he turns around and he says, oh no, I have 6 more, but this is probably one of my favorite ones. I said 6 more? That response sparked a 2-minute conversation that I had with this guy. And let me tell you, what he shared with me in that brief 2-minute conversation completely changed my life. And it's life-changing conversations and lessons like this that I decided to share right inside of our Liberty Pursuit network. And to be honest with you, it really wasn't even so much the car that he was driving. It just made me think to myself, like, how does this guy just have the freedom to be able to live his life the way he did? Nice car, hanging out at a fancy restaurant in the middle of the afternoon. It really made me wonder, how do you do that? Anyway, when I was living paycheck to paycheck, I wish that I knew people like this that would kind of like let me know the inside scoop. So anyway, if you want to join like-minded people just like us, join us over in the Liberty Pursuit Network. I left a link for you guys in the description down below this video.
And expanding that child tax credit, or you mentioned housing before, giving that extra money for a first home. If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. That's just it. It's about paying their fair share.
And to Rule's credit, she talked about Kamala Harris and her answer to this question. I guess they're at a point where not saying anything about it would kind of make it look like they're incompetent journalists.
I do, but here's what's a little tricky. She doesn't answer the question around if the GOP is controlling the Senate, if she can't raise corporate taxes, where is she going to get the money from? To expand the child tax credit and do all the things she wants to do. And she says, we just have to do it. And that's great, and that's a campaign promise. But the issue is, if it means we're just going to borrow again, then what we're doing is we're just never addressing the deficit. And back in the days when you were a proud Republican, debts and deficits mattered.
Now, this is MSNBC, folks, a news outlet that's absolutely adoring Kamala Harris. And even they cannot cover up the fact that Kamala Harris is coming into this thing without a plan. She has the correct concept of a plan, but when faced with a real world adversity, she got nothing. All she says is that we have to make it happen. Does this include our taxes as well? If she can't raise taxes on these corporations, would she then turn to us for this money that she wants to kind of throw around? And again, to MSNBC's credit, they didn't let Kamala Harris just lie her way through this entire interview. We're all aware our finances were better off under Donald Trump, but this administration wants us to believe that we were in the Great Depression under former President Donald Trump.
You've just laid out a big plan, but still, polling shows that most likely voters still think Donald Trump is better to handle the economy. Why do you think that is?
Well, here's what I know in terms of the facts. Donald Trump left us with the worst economy since the Great Depression when you look at, for example, the employment numbers.
It was during COVID, and employment was so high because we shut down the government, we shut down the country.
Even before the pandemic, he lost manufacturing jobs by most people's estimates, at least 200,000. He lost manufacturing plants, ask the auto workers.
Does Kamala Harris's team just sleep all day or something? So yeah, I hope that I've proven it to you guys. It was yet again a masterclass from prospective VP JD Vance, and Tim Waltz certainly learned a thing or two from the man. You guys agree? Drop a quick yes or no in the comments down below, guys. We'll definitely revisit this in a future video. And while that is cooking, you can go ahead and check out our other videos on the channel. Just click on our channel, click on Ron Yates, click on either the videos or the live tab. I got some heat in there for you guys. Matter of fact, I just uploaded a video where Kamala Harris herself throws Joe Biden under the bus. Then she throws the bus in drive and hits the gas. Make sure you guys check that one right after this one. As always, appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for hitting the like button. Thank you for subscribing to the channel and sharing these videos. Also, if you want to join us over in our Patreon community, you can do so. I left some links for you guys down below. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.